The story begins high in the northern mountains, where the wind never seemed to stop moving through the pine forests. The mountains stretched endlessly beneath gray skies, and hidden among them stood an old cabin that locals rarely spoke about. It was not because the cabin looked frightening. In fact, from a distance, it appeared peaceful. A small wooden structure sat beside a narrow stream, surrounded by tall evergreen trees and backed by towering cliffs. Travelers passing through the region often thought it looked like the perfect place to spend a quiet weekend. Yet nobody stayed there anymore. For years, rumors followed the cabin like a shadow. Hunters avoided it. Hikers refused to camp nearby. Even residents living in the nearest mountain town, nearly 20 miles away, lowered their voices whenever its name came up. Most stories were dismissed as mountain folklore. Some claimed strange lights appeared around the cabin after midnight. Others insisted they heard voices carried through the trees, despite nobody living there. A few older residents told stories about people who entered the cabin alone and left feeling as though days had disappeared from their memory. No one could prove any of it. The cabin itself had been built nearly 80 years earlier by a trapper named Samuel Boone. He was known as a skilled outdoorsman who could survive the harshest winters. Then one winter, he vanished. Search parties looked for weeks. His tracks remained untouched. His rifle was found leaning against the cabin wall. His dog was discovered sitting quietly on the porch. But Samuel Boone was never found. Years later, another owner purchased the property. Then another. Then another. None stayed long. Every owner eventually sold the cabin, often at a loss, refusing to explain why. As decades passed, the cabin became one of those places that existed somewhere between reality and legend. Then came Evelyn Hart, 34 years old, a successful travel writer, independent and adventurous. Evelyn built her reputation exploring remote locations and documenting forgotten places. She did not believe in ghost stories. She believed in facts. When she first heard about the mountain cabin, she laughed at the rumors. To her, it sounded like the perfect subject for a book. A mysterious cabin, strange local legends, an isolated wilderness setting. Readers would love it. Against the advice of nearly everyone she met, Evelyn purchased the cabin. The locals watched silently as moving trucks climbed the mountain road. Many believed she would leave within a month. But Evelyn stayed. At first, everything seemed normal. She repaired broken windows, installed solar panels, painted the weathered walls. Soon photographs of the cabin appeared on her social media pages. The images looked beautiful. Sunrise over snow-covered peaks, morning fog drifting through pine trees, wild deer grazing nearby. Her followers loved the updates. For several weeks, Evelyn described the experience as peaceful. She wrote about enjoying the silence, about reconnecting with nature, about finally finding a place where she could focus on writing without distractions. Then subtle changes appeared in her journal entries. The first incident seemed insignificant. One morning, she woke up convinced she heard footsteps circling the cabin during the night. When she checked outside, no tracks existed. Fresh snow covered the ground. Nothing could have walked there without leaving evidence. She shrugged it off. A few days later, she noticed something stranger. Objects inside the cabin occasionally appeared in different locations. Books she left on tables were found on shelves. Kitchen utensils changed drawers. At first, she blamed herself. Living alone could make anyone absent-minded. But the incidents continued. Then came the voices. Late one evening, while writing near the fireplace, Evelyn heard what sounded like distant conversation outside. She opened the door. Nobody was there. The forest stood silent beneath moonlight. Still, she could have sworn she heard people talking moments earlier. The following week, things escalated. Evelyn discovered muddy footprints leading to the cabin porch. The footprints stopped abruptly, halfway across the yard. No return tracks, no explanation. The snow remained untouched beyond that point. It was as if whoever made them simply disappeared. For the first time, Evelyn felt uneasy. Yet curiosity outweighed fear. Instead of leaving, she became determined to uncover the truth. She installed cameras around the property, motion sensors, audio recorders. She began documenting every unusual event. Her audience followed the investigation eagerly. Thousands of readers became invested in the mystery. Then one night the cameras captured something impossible. At exactly 2:17 a.m., every camera briefly malfunctioned. Static filled the screens. The disruption lasted 37 seconds. When the footage returned, the front door of the cabin stood wide open. Evelyn appeared standing on the porch, barefoot, motionless, staring into the darkness. She remained there for nearly 10 minutes, then calmly walked back inside. The next morning she had no memory of it. When she reviewed the footage herself, her expression changed. For the first time since arriving, genuine fear appeared on her face. Because she remembered going to bed, she remembered falling asleep. But she did not remember stepping outside. And she certainly did not remember standing motionless in freezing temperatures in the middle of the night. Her followers became alarmed. Many urged her to leave immediately. Evelyn refused. Instead, she announced she had discovered something important, something connected to the cabin's history, something she planned to reveal soon. Unfortunately, she never got the chance, because what happened next would transform the mountain cabin from a local legend into one of the most disturbing mysteries in the region's history. SP. After discovering the strange footage of herself standing outside at 2:17 in the morning, Evelyn Hart became obsessed with finding an explanation. Fear was certainly there now, but fear alone was not enough to make her leave. If anything, the mystery had tightened its grip on her. She had built her career investigating forgotten places and separating fact from fiction. Walking away now would mean admitting that something in those mountains had defeated her curiosity. For the next several days, she barely slept. Instead, she spent hours reviewing recordings from the cameras and audio devices she had placed around the cabin. She examined every frame, every shadow, every sound. At first, nothing unusual appeared. Then she noticed a pattern. Each night, shortly before 2:17 a.m., the forest became unnaturally quiet. The mountain winds stopped. The stream beside the cabin seemed to fade. Even the occasional sounds of nocturnal animals disappeared. It was as if the entire wilderness paused. Then came the interference. The cameras glitched, the audio recordings filled with static. And somewhere within that static, faint voices could be heard. The voices were almost impossible to understand. They sounded distant, whispered, layered over one another, like dozens of people speaking at the same time from far underground. Evelyn spent hours enhancing the recordings. Finally, she isolated a single phrase. The result made her blood run cold. A voice clearly whispered, "Come below." She listened again. The same phrase repeated, again and again, always the same words. Come below, come below, come below. Most people would have packed their belongings immediately. Evelyn did the opposite. She started researching the history of the mountain itself. The cabin's past had already raised questions, but now she suspected the mystery went much deeper than the structure standing on the surface. What she discovered surprised her. Long before settlers arrived, the region had been avoided by several indigenous groups, not because it lacked resources. The area contained fresh water, game animals, and shelter. Yet ancient stories described the mountain as a place where people vanished. One translated account described the sleeping hollow beneath stone. Another referred to voices that call through the earth. The stories were centuries old, far older than Samuel Boone. Evelyn became convinced that the cabin had merely been built above something much older. Something hidden. Something forgotten. One afternoon she hiked several miles around the mountain, carrying old maps and surveying equipment. Near sunset, she discovered a narrow depression hidden among thick pines, less than half a mile from the cabin. At first glance, it looked natural, but closer inspection revealed something unusual. The ground around the depression had partially collapsed. Beneath loose rocks, she found timber supports. Old ones, very old. The remains of an abandoned mine entrance. Excitement immediately replaced fear. The mountain had once been mined. That explained everything. The sounds, the legends, the disappearances. Perhaps underground tunnels were creating strange acoustic effects. Perhaps carbon monoxide or another gas was affecting people's perceptions. Finally, she had a logical direction to investigate. The next day, she returned with climbing gear, lights, cameras, and safety equipment. She documented everything. Thousands of viewers followed her live stream as she entered the forgotten mine. The tunnel descended sharply. Cold air drifted upward from darkness below. The deeper she traveled, the colder it became. Soon, sunlight vanished completely. Only her headlamp illuminated the passage ahead. The mine appeared far older than historical records suggested. The walls showed evidence of excavation, but some sections looked strangely smooth, almost carved, as though someone had shaped the stone deliberately. Several hundred feet underground, she discovered something unexpected. The tunnel split into two separate passages. One passage matched old mining maps. The other did not. The second tunnel was absent from every record she could find, yet it looked older than the mine itself. The walls were covered with strange markings. Not words, not symbols she recognized, just endless patterns etched into stone. Spirals, lines, circular designs. The same shapes repeated again and again. Evelyn felt uneasy. The tunnel should not have existed. Yet there it was, waiting beneath the mountain. She followed it. The deeper she went, the more disoriented she became. Her compass stopped working. Electronic equipment flickered unpredictably. Several viewers watching the live stream later claimed the image occasionally distorted for brief moments. At one point, a figure appeared standing behind Evelyn. When she turned around, nobody was there. The comments section exploded. People begged her to leave. She continued forward. Eventually, the passage opened into a massive underground chamber. The sight left her speechless. The cavern stretched beyond the range of her light. Gigantic stone pillars rose toward darkness overhead. Water dripped steadily from unseen heights. And in the center stood something impossible. A circle of stone structures, perfectly arranged, ancient, far older than any mine, far older than any settlement known to have existed in the region. The formation looked deliberate, purposeful, almost ceremonial. Evelyn slowly approached. As she moved closer, the audio on her live stream began producing strange feedback. Then the whispers returned. Only now they were louder, much louder. For the first time, viewers could hear them clearly. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, voices overlapping one another, speaking in languages nobody recognized. The comments flooded instantly. People around the world were listening, and everyone heard the same thing. The whispers seemed to be coming from beneath the cavern floor. Evelyn knelt and placed her hand against the stone. Immediately changed. The color drained from her skin. She later described the sensation in her journal. The stone felt warm. Not slightly warm, body temperature warm, as though something alive existed below it. She left the cavern shortly afterward. For the first time since arriving at the mountain, she looked genuinely shaken. Back at the cabin, she uploaded her findings. The footage went viral. Millions watched. News outlets contacted her. Archaeologists requested access to the location. Researchers wanted samples. Experts debated endlessly online. Some believed the structures represented an undiscovered ancient site. Others dismissed the footage as an elaborate hoax. Meanwhile, Evelyn's behavior continued changing. Friends noticed it during video calls. Her sleep schedule became erratic. Dark circles formed beneath her eyes. She often appeared distracted. Sometimes she paused mid-conversation, as though listening to someone standing nearby. When asked about it, she simply smiled. A week later, she uploaded a brief message. The video lasted less than 3 minutes, yet it would become one of the most analyzed recordings in the entire investigation. Evelyn sat alone at her desk. The cabin looked normal. The fire crackled softly behind her. But something about her expression felt different. Calmer. Almost detached. She explained that she believed the cavern was connected to every disappearance associated with the mountain. She also revealed that she had found old records mentioning several missing persons, dating back nearly 2 centuries. Hunters, trappers, travelers, miners. Every disappearance occurred within a few miles of the cabin. Then she said something that alarmed everyone watching. She claimed the voices were becoming easier to understand. At first, they had been whispers. Now they sounded almost conversational. She insisted they were trying to tell her something. Most viewers assumed exhaustion had finally affected her judgment. Many pleaded with her to leave. Instead, Evelyn announced she would return underground one final time. She believed answers awaited her beneath the mountain. The expedition was scheduled for the following Saturday. Thousands tuned in when the live stream began. Evelyn entered the mine shortly after sunrise. She appeared determined, confident, prepared. The first part of the journey unfolded normally. Viewers watched as she descended through familiar tunnels. She reached the underground chamber several hours later. Then, things began going wrong. The video feed flickered repeatedly. Audio distorted. The whispers returned immediately. Only now they sounded far louder than before. People watching described the experience as deeply unsettling. Some claimed they heard their own names hidden among the voices. Others reported hearing entirely different phrases. No 2 accounts matched exactly. Then Evelyn noticed something. A narrow opening behind one of the stone structures. The gap had not been there previously, or at least she had never seen it before. The opening led deeper underground. Without hesitation, she moved toward it. Viewers begged her to stop. She ignored them. The tunnel beyond was impossibly narrow. At times she had to squeeze sideways between stone walls. The deeper she traveled, the stronger the interference became. The video image degraded. Static consumed the screen. Then the feed briefly cleared. For a single moment, viewers saw Evelyn emerge into another chamber. A much larger chamber. Something stood in the darkness ahead. Nobody could determine what it was. The image vanished almost immediately. Seconds later, the live stream ended completely. No signal, no explanation, nothing. At first, viewers assumed technical problems had interrupted the broadcast. Hours passed. No update. A full day passed. Still nothing. Friends attempted contacting her. No response. Authorities were notified. Search teams organized quickly. By Monday morning, rescuers entered the mine. What they found would make the mystery far worse. Because Evelyn's equipment was discovered. Her backpack, her camera, her flashlight. Everything lay neatly arranged inside the second chamber. But Evelyn Hart herself was nowhere to be found. There were no footprints leading away, no evidence of a struggle, no signs of collapse, no blood, no body. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist. And among the equipment, investigators found one final item, a notebook. Its final page contained only a single sentence written in hurried handwriting. The voices were never calling from below. They were calling from the other side. The disappearance of Evelyn Hart should have marked the end of the mystery. Instead, it was only the beginning. Within days, news of the vanished travel writer spread across the country. Television networks covered the story continuously. Online forums filled with theories. Millions of people watched archived recordings from her final broadcasts, searching for clues hidden in the footage. Everyone wanted the answer to the same question: what happened inside the mountain? Search teams returned repeatedly. The first operation lasted 6 days. Professional rescuers explored every accessible section of the mine. They mapped tunnels, scanned underground chambers, searched nearby cliffs and forests. Nothing. No trace of Evelyn Hart. The second search involved state authorities and geological experts. Again, nothing. The tunnels contained no hidden exits, no unexplored passages large enough for a person to escape through. According to every physical explanation available, Evelyn should have been somewhere inside the mountain. Yet she wasn't. Her disappearance slowly transformed from a missing person investigation into something much stranger. Then investigators began examining the material she had left behind. The notebook recovered from the second chamber became particularly important. Most pages contained ordinary observations, maps, sketches, research notes, descriptions of underground structures. But as investigators moved toward the final sections, the writing changed dramatically. Entire pages had been filled with hurried entries written at odd hours of the night. The content disturbed everyone who read it. Evelyn repeatedly described hearing conversations when nobody was present. Not whispers anymore, conversations. She claimed the voices discussed events before they happened. Several entries appeared impossible to explain. One page described a thunderstorm that would strike the mountain 3 days later. The storm occurred exactly as written. Another page predicted a rock slide that blocked part of the access road. The prediction proved accurate. At first, authorities suspected coincidence. Then they discovered a series of entries even stranger than the predictions. Evelyn wrote extensively about dreams. The dreams always followed the same pattern. She found herself standing in the underground chamber. The stone circle surrounded her. The voices called from darkness beyond the pillars. Eventually, someone emerged. Not a monster, not a ghost, a woman. The same woman every time. According to Evelyn's descriptions, the stranger appeared to be around 40 years old, dressed in clothing from another era. Her face seemed familiar, despite Evelyn never having met her. Most importantly, the woman never spoke. She simply pointed toward a doorway hidden among the shadows. Every dream ended there. Investigators initially dismissed the dreams as symptoms of stress. Then one researcher noticed something unusual. The woman described in Evelyn's journal closely matched an old photograph connected to the cabin's history. The photograph had been taken nearly 70 years earlier. It showed a woman named Clara Dawson. Clara had vanished from the same mountain in 1954. Her case remained unsolved. When investigators compared the image with Evelyn's sketches, the resemblance was undeniable. The discovery reignited public interest. People began digging through historical records. Journalists uncovered forgotten reports. Researchers examined archives. A startling pattern emerged. For nearly 2 centuries, disappearances around the mountain shared remarkable similarities. Every missing person had spent time near the cabin. Many reported hearing voices shortly before vanishing. Several mentioned vivid dreams involving unknown individuals, and almost all disappeared without leaving physical evidence behind. The mountain seemed to collect people, generation after generation, without explanation. As attention intensified, a private research organization offered to fund a comprehensive exploration of the underground chambers. Unlike previous searches focused on finding Evelyn, this expedition aimed to understand the entire mystery. The team included geologists, archaeologists, engineers, psychologists, professional cave explorers. Every member entered with skepticism, legends to collapse under scientific investigation. At first, their findings appeared normal. The stone structures were real. Ancient, certainly, but real. Carbon dating suggested they were thousands of years old, far older than any documented settlement in the region. The discovery alone made international headlines. Yet the deeper mysteries remained. The voices continued. Multiple team members reported hearing faint conversations. Audio equipment occasionally recorded sounds that nobody could identify. Compasses malfunctioned. Electronic devices lost power unexpectedly. Nothing proved supernatural, but nothing fully explained the experiences either. Then came the discovery that changed everything. While examining the second chamber, the location where Evelyn's equipment had been found, researchers identified a narrow crack hidden behind one of the stone formations. The opening was nearly invisible. Natural erosion had concealed it for centuries. After several hours of excavation, the crack widened enough for exploration. Beyond it lay another passage, a passage no previous search had documented. Excitement spread through the team. At last they had discovered somewhere new. The tunnel descended steeply. Unlike the mine passages above, this corridor showed no evidence of human excavation. The walls looked unnaturally smooth, almost polished. As explorers moved deeper, instruments began behaving erratically. Temperature readings fluctuated wildly. GPS devices failed completely despite being underground-compatible units. Radio communication degraded. Several team members reported dizziness. Others complained of vivid feelings of familiarity. One explorer later described the sensation as walking through a memory that didn't belong to me. After nearly 2 hours of descent, the passage opened into a vast cavern. What awaited them there remains controversial even today. Official reports describe a natural chamber containing unusual geological formations. Unofficial accounts tell a different story. According to several participants, the cavern contained hundreds of stone markers arranged in rows. Each marker resembled a grave, yet no human remains existed beneath them. Instead, every marker contained an object. Personal objects. A pocket watch, a hunting knife, a photograph, a wedding ring. Items connected to missing individuals from different periods of history. Researchers eventually identified dozens of objects belonging to people who had vanished around the mountain, including Samuel Boone, including Clara Dawson, including several others whose disappearances stretched back generations. Then they found something even more disturbing. One of the markers contained Evelyn Hart's camera lens. Not the camera discovered during the search, just the lens, separated cleanly, placed carefully among the others, as if someone had added it to a collection. The discovery sparked immediate debate. Who placed these objects there? How long had the chamber existed? Why were belongings from missing persons gathered together underground? The questions multiplied faster than answers. Yet the most chilling moment came later. At the far end of the cavern stood a wall unlike anything else in the mountain. Perfectly smooth, perfectly flat. The surface reflected light strangely, not like stone, not like metal. Several researchers compared it to dark glass. When light struck the wall, distorted reflections appeared. The reflections moved incorrectly. People standing still seemed to shift slightly. Movements lagged behind reality. Expressions changed independently. The phenomenon lasted only moments at a time. Yet enough witnesses reported it that the incident became impossible to ignore. One researcher approached within a few feet. He later claimed he saw figures standing beyond the reflective surface. Human silhouettes, dozens of them, watching. The official expedition ended shortly afterward. Authorities sealed the newly discovered passages. Public access was prohibited. Reports were classified. Many details never reached the media. Yet rumors escaped, and rumors only fueled the legend further. Over the following years, fascination with the mountain continued growing. Documentaries were produced, books were written, podcasts investigated every detail. Thousands visited the region, hoping to glimpse the mysterious cabin. Most found nothing unusual. The cabin itself remained abandoned. Weather slowly reclaimed it. Snow collapsed sections of the roof. Windows shattered. Paint peeled away. Nature began erasing the structure from the landscape. Still, stories persisted. Occasional hikers reported hearing voices near the property. Some claimed lights appeared inside the abandoned cabin, despite the absence of electricity. Others described vivid dreams after spending nights nearby. Dreams involving strangers calling from darkness. Dreams involving a doorway beneath the mountain. Then, nearly 8 years after Evelyn vanished, something happened that reignited worldwide attention. A backpacker exploring a ridge several miles away discovered a small metal container wedged between rocks. Inside lay a notebook, weathered but intact. Authorities quickly recovered it. The handwriting belonged to Evelyn Hart. Experts verified it. The notebook contained entries never seen before. Entries apparently written after her disappearance. The dates continued for weeks beyond the day she vanished. The content remains partially classified. However, one passage eventually leaked online. It became perhaps the most discussed piece of evidence in the entire mystery. The entry read, "I understand now why nobody was ever found. The mountain isn't taking people. It never was. The doorway is real. Voices belong to those who crossed before us. Some stayed willingly. Some tried to return. The hardest part is accepting that what waits beyond isn't death. It's another place. And once you see it, home no longer feels real." No one knows whether the entry was genuine. No one knows how the notebook appeared on the ridge years later. And no one knows what truly happened to Evelyn Hart. To this day, her case officially remains unsolved. The mountain still stands. The forests still whisper when the wind moves through the pines. The abandoned cabin still waits beneath the shadow of the cliffs. And somewhere beneath those ancient stones, hidden far below the earth, there may still be a doorway that no map can locate. A doorway connected to every disappearance. A doorway connected to every voice. A doorway that perhaps opened for Samuel Boone, for Clara Dawson, for countless others lost to history. And finally, for the last woman who stayed in that mountain cabin and vanished without a trace. Whether she died, escaped, or crossed into something beyond human understanding remains unknown. But if the final words attributed to Evelyn Hart are true, then the most terrifying possibility is not that she disappeared. The most terrifying possibility is that she survived and chose never to come back.